Hi guys, welcome back. Um, at the moment of filming, we've just gone live with the More Millions for Putin's Yacht video on YouTube, but we've also just gone live with the Italy road trip vlog, if you like, for want of a better name. So basically, I filmed the trip. If you haven't seen it, I filmed the whole trip from before I left and all the way through and then until I got back to my studio. And it's quite a long one. It's a like 40-minute video, and it charts the trip basically. I didn't drive this time; I flew, which will become apparent to you if you decide to watch that video. And one of the comments we got on that video was about the cost to make that road trip, because I said in the video that I worked from the cost of the road trip to flying to as a comparison, and then I deemed it was not possible for me to justify the cost to drive back down, although I would have loved to have. Let's put it this way: if the cost was the same to drive there as it would be to fly, I would drive every time, even though it takes 2 days to drive down there, and it's quite tiring to do. I love those road trips, so by choice I would drive, but by necessity of price, I chose to fly this time. So I thought I would talk a little bit about that, about the costs, what those costs are. I have done road trip videos before, which have talked about the costs, but I haven't done them for quite a long time. And that's because to me, I feel like once I've talked about that a couple of times in a couple of videos, there's no point talking about it anymore. I thought I'd go through some of the costs here. And also another question that comes up a lot when I do these trips and I go to marinas is about access to those marinas, how I get in and how I get access to walk straight up to the boats and stuff like that. Especially with that a recent video where the security tried to stop me from filming, and people were asking, well, some people were even suggesting that I wasn't allowed to film where I was, and one chap suggesting that I should get permission to film in Monaco, anything, for commercial reasons. Obviously, I have a YouTube channel, and that I should contact a lawyer to do it properly. Like I'm going to pay a lawyer every time I want to film in Monaco. The fact that we'll come back to that anyway. I go off on a tangent, but okay. So going back to the first subject is I've got a cup of coffee here, which I hope you don't mind. I'm going to drink. This is this is one of my favorite coffees, a Peruvian coffee, of course. It's called Pichanaki, which does not sound Spanish because it's probably Quechuan, which is the indigenous language that was spoken in South America before the Spanish arrived there. So anyway, it's a great coffee. I buy it green. I get my coffee in Peru when I'm there, and I bring it home and then I roast it myself. Anyway, the reason, like I said, the reason why I do the road trips is there's a few reasons why I do it. One of them is I love the road trip. I love to do it. That's not the only reason. When we do these trips into Europe, we go there for quite some time, like a month. And when you go away for a long period of time, you want to take. I mean, I personally want to take things with me to make my life easier when I'm there. If I'm there for a few days, I can live in a hotel room, eat pizza and what have you, and and then just order room service and then away you go. But when you're there for a month, you want to live there. You want to feel like you're living, cook your own food, and things like that, and have some home comforts with you. So that's the main reason why I take the car in these on these trips. It's because I can put a lot of gear in there, some lights and stuff to help me work. Also, I have a back issue from when I was in the military, and as a result, this desk I'm sat at right now is a standing desk. It's from a company called Fully, and it really good. 90% of the time I'm standing at my desk. I also have one in South America, which was a lot less expensive than this one. It's not a Fully, which is fancy brand, like a bamboo desktop and all this kind of stuff. But I got one there. It's equally as good. And when I do the road trips, I take a manual standing thing, which sits on top of your desk. You put all your gear on it, and you can just grab the edges of it and lift it up and down like this. I showed it in a recent video when we were in Italy earlier this year. I'll find some footage and put it on top. So I take that with me, and a load of other stuff. And when we go down there, we stay in an apartment. We don't stay in a hotel. And then we can, we have a kitchen and everything, and we can cook and stuff like that. So it works out. That saves us a lot of money, because then we just buy groceries instead of having to go to restaurants and stuff and room service and all that stuff, which really adds up. The reason why in the video I've just posted, the Italy vlog video, I said that the cost of driving down there round trip is about 1,400. I have to say it in euros, because once I get over the water into mainland Europe, everything I get charged in is in euros. So I'm just doing it in euros because I haven't worked it out in sterling. But the cost is about 1,400 euros round trip, which is expensive, when you consider that it depends how you travel, but if you travel light, i.e. if you don't check a bag in and you fly with EasyJet, you can fly direct to the south of France for about £50, right? So you could do a return trip for £100. That's without luggage, in a crappy seat and etc. It's only a couple of hours on the plane, so I can live with a crappy seat. But I needed to check a bag in, and if you go onto EasyJet website, for instance, which is where this £100 flight comes from, once you start checking bags in, it rapidly goes up very quickly. And when I was looking at the cost of flying down there, I don't pay for it. My yacht pays for it, but they're very flexible, and they allow me to find the flight, and then they'll confirm that is the right price, or the price that they're willing to pay. And then they will give me, instead of buying me a ticket, if I want to drive, they will give me the money it would cost to fly down there with a checked-in bag, etc., etc. And then I'll take that money, and I just deduct that from what I pay to take my car, right? So that's how I'll do it when it's for work. If I'm going down off my own dime, like if I'm going down just to film and stay in this place I was talking about, then I'm shouldering all the costs. So when I look at flights, the EasyJet flight for this particular trip, I looked at EasyJet, and it was like I said, I think it was like £70 down, because it was short notice that I suddenly had to go back to Italy, and then the return trip was like £50, right? So great, it's like £80 down, £50 back, £130. So you think, oh, great, that's cheap, but then when you add the bag and you add a couple of other things, which I don't remember what they were now, but there was a couple of other things I had to add, and it rapidly went up to £250 for a return flight. And then when I looked at KLM, I fly a lot with KLM, so it worked out cheaper, and I could fly business class for the same price. I could fly cheaper with business class. I had to use a few miles, but it's not direct, so I had to fly to Schiphol in Amsterdam and then down to Nice, so it was a longer day. Anyway, the bottom line is the price of the flight was £250, £300. I think we settled on 300. Now the cost of the road trip, that's where it starts to get interesting. So the cost for the trip, the main elements of the road trip is fuel, hotels, the ferry or the Channel Tunnel when you cross over into mainland Europe, and the biggest cost per trip is the tolls in France. The French tolls are so expensive. The French love to go on strike for lots of things, right? They have lots of strikes there. They're famous for it, and yet I don't know why they don't strike for that, because that is the most egregious price or most egregious cost of living in France. To drive on those toll roads is outrageous. I don't have all of the fees for the most recent trip, because they come in dribs. They come in like all of the charges in 1 month. You'll get a bill the following month and so on. But what I can show you is the previous trips. Now, in the previous trip, which was in July last year, I drove down through France. Then I cross over. I go through the Mont Blanc, which takes you into Italy. There's a Mont Blanc tunnel charge as well. I forgot to add that on Mont Blanc tunnel. I'm just making notes so I remember to go back to it. And then once you're out the Mont Blanc, you're in Italy, right? And they have tolls too. They're not as bad as France, but they do add up. And then while we were there for the month, we were driving on the toll roads back and forward between Monaco and going to Genoa and all. We were driving all around, so we were doing a lot of driving down there. So all of those tolls are also added, and I have a toll pass. That's how I've got these. That's how I get these bills every month. I use the toll pass. Now, in July last year, we drove down, and we drove down in sorry, not July. It was we drove down in June and we came back in July. Now, so the charges that I got for the down trip were, so I got two charges, one for June and one for July. The June bill was 124 euros and 10 cents, and the July bill was 258 euros and 30 cents. Now that's a combination. That's for the trip down and the trip back, plus the Italian toll. So all the tolls I incurred, because they all go through the same toll pass. So it's, what's that? 258, 358, 378, 382, 382.40. That it was for the tolls. So I'll put that on here. Did I say 382.40? I should have done this before I filmed. 382.40. So that's the biggest single charge that you get on this whole trip. I think it's, yeah, probably is. The next most expensive charge will be fuel. Now the Macan, I drive a Macan down there now. I used to have a Kia Sportage, which was better on fuel, and fuel wasn't as expensive back then. But now the Macan does about 27 miles to the gallon. In the UK, we fill up in liters, but we still do miles per gallon. It's very confusing. But to fill the tank in the UK was just over £100 when I left last time, which is outrageous in itself. But I'm not going to go down that road. And then once we got over into Europe, it was about 120, 130 euros to fill up, depending on where we had to fill. If we filled up on the auto route, it's more expensive, isn't it? When you're on a motorway, it's always more expensive. So, and we had to fill up 1, 2, 3 times on the way down. So that was like, so actually the cost of fuel outweighs the cost of tolls. So it was, I remember it being just over £100 to fill the car before we started the trip, and then we had to fill up again in France, and then we had to fill up one more time, and that got us to Italy, I believe. So that would have been let's say it was 130 in France, so it's 260, and pounds into euros is 100. Let's say 110. So that's 370 euros. Let's say 370 euros. That's for one. That's in one direction. So let's double that, because obviously I have to get home as well. So that's what, 600, 740. So 740. That's the fuel. That's a big amount. Those tolls, don't forget, they're both ways. So that's a return trip tolls. The hotels, I have to stay in. Well, last time there was this trip there were 3 of us, so I needed 2 hotel rooms. Now we stay in a cheap hotel on the way down because you just need somewhere to sleep, and I think it was 70 euros each room. So that was 100. That's 140. So 140 euros. And then on the way back there was only 2 of us because one flew back. So I'll add another 70 to that. So that's 210 euros. Now the next expense was the ferry. The Channel Tunnel we took. The ferry is an option, but the prices are approximately the same. And it depends when you go, to be honest. If you go during the summer holidays, it's much more expensive. Then when we normally go in May, and in yeah, we normally go in May and in September, which is not summer holidays. But the cost is usually around 130 euros or 130 pounds. Sorry, so let's say 150 euros. So that's 300 euros for the round trip. And then the last thing that I can think of right now, there is one other thing I've just thought about, but Mont Blanc Tunnel, it goes up every time we go through. So we go through there 2 to 3 times a year, and every time we go through, it's gone up like 4 euros. So at the last count I can remember, I think it was 56 euros, I think. Let's say 55 euros. So that's twice, so that's 110 euros. And the last thing that I haven't accounted for, which is not technically, I suppose it is, but it's food, because it's not technically a cost of the trip, but you need to eat when you're on the trip. So I don't know what I would put for food. What I tend to do is pack as much food as we can for at least for the first day, and then I have a little cooler that goes in the car, and you can put stuff in, like you put your sandwiches in to keep them cooler if it's hot, and drinks and stuff like that. And then but the second day, because the cooler, you can't leave it on overnight because it will deaden the battery. So you can't really keep anything in it overnight. And then the next day, I tend to buy some food somewhere. So it doesn't cost me too much. And on the way home, if I've been staying in a hotel, we do the same thing. So I would say, let's say for food, let's say 50 euros for both. No, well, let's say 100 euros, because you're still going to buy the food to take with you, right? So the cost there, if we add that up, let me get my calculator because my mathematics is not great. So it's 740 plus 210. So that's fuel plus hotels plus tolls, 382.40, plus the ferry, the Channel Tunnel, 300, plus Mont Blanc, 110, plus 100 for food. And there you go. That's 1,842.40. So that's actually more than I remembered. So 1,800 euros, which in pounds is probably, let's see, what's 1,842 euros in sterling? £1,546.82. So 1,546 pounds. So let's put that down here. So 1,842, and it's effectively 1,500 pounds. So that's a lot of money, isn't it? 1,800 euros. Wow. I in my head I always thought it was about 1,400. So that is that's a big consideration when you're doing these trips. I watch a lot of YouTubers like Seen Through Glass and Shmee 150, and they do these road trips all the time, and they never talk about the cost. But unless you've done it, you don't really appreciate it, right? Because they just do it, and they just they're on the trip, and then you could be you could misunderstand and think that they're just paying for fuel, right? But there's an awful lot of cost involved. And I've noticed that when Shmee does it, he always buys a flexi pass at the Channel Tunnel, which it's like over double what a normal pass is. I have no idea why. I actually asked him once, why are you buying that flexi pass? And he's like, well, it's very flexible, but the normal ticket's very flexible as well. If you miss your train, they just give you a new one. They put you on the next train. Now, if the next train is full, which has happened to me one time in all the years I've been driving, the next train was full, and the train after that was full. So we had to wait. We got there, we missed our train by 20 minutes, and we had to wait for 2 trains to go. And then we got the third train, and it put us back like a couple of hours, which sucked. But that's very rare. So yeah, so that's a lot of money to invest in the trip, right? So it has to be, I have to be able to justify it. Obviously, by the trip in itself will pay for the costs. We also, obviously, all the patrons, all the money that we get from Patreon goes towards these trips and for equipment. I bought a new drone, recently, and some of the money for that drone came from the money from Patreon. But the money stays in the account, the Patreon. Well, it used to, but now I put it in my bank account because I figured I'll get some interest. I put it into a bank account and I save that for road trips. I actually have an account, that a saving account specifically named road trips, Patreon road trips funds or something like that. And the money goes in there, and then I use it for those trips and for equipment if there's any left over. But like, as you can see, that and don't forget that money that I've just told you about there, that's only for the trip. That's not for the hotel once we get there, or the apartment that we stay in once we get there. And that obviously, if we're staying for 3 weeks to a month, then the cost of the place that we stay at is around 1,600 to 2,000 euros. So, you know, you're looking at about 4,000 euros for those trips that we do. So it's a lot of money. So yeah, the trips are, they have to be we have to be able to justify them. You know, we know that we're going to do well. It's an investment. You know, it's like a friend of mine said, you have to speculate to accumulate, but he also said a fool and his money is easily parted. So you have to figure out which one you are. But I think that the amount of content that we get from those trips is worth the investment, if you like, the cost. So yeah, so once we get down there, we stay in an apartment, and you know, then it's like we live there, and that's great. And the biggest expense in Italy when you rent an apartment is parking, because if you've ever been to Italy, you'll know what I'm talking about. The traffic in Italy is brutal, and the Italian cities never seem to adjust to traffic, and it's very difficult to get off-street parking. So that's why whenever you go to Italy, there's cars everywhere parked on zebra crossings and everything. So yeah, so we always pay extra because we need parking. So that sucks, because a lot of them will say there's parking, and then when you inquire, they said, "Well, there's a car park around the corner." That's not parking, right? So yeah, the last trip we did, not the one that I just did on the plane, but the last trip we did with the car, we rented a new place that we'd never rented before. And in general, the actual place that we stayed in was nice. I did a little video I showed you around when I first got there. It was okay, you know, it had everything we needed, and it was quiet, and it had off-street parking, and it was nice. However, there was a person who lived above that I think was a horse, and they had the wooden, you know, they had the shoes on the wooden floor, and it was clippity clop all day long, and it was a nightmare. And we only stayed there for we were supposed to stay there for 21 days, and we only stayed there for 6 in the end, and then we moved. We went back to the place we normally go to, which we deemed too expensive. But the person above was walking around in these wooden clogs or something. I mean, and I've never known anyone to walk around their apartment so much. It was like they were doing a sponsored walk. So yeah, so we moved from there and went to another place. Anyway, that's not interesting really. So the next question that we get quite a lot is about the access to the marinas. You know, how do you get the access? Do you have to apply for a pass and all this kind of stuff? Well, the reality is, the places that we go, the marinas that we go to, I've spent, you know, the better part of 2 decades going there on yachts or on other types of ships, because I've worked, you know, I was in the cruise ship industry before, superyacht industry, and I've spent an awful lot of time going to these marinas, so I know them intimately. You know, I know where everything is. When I go into a marina, let's say Genoa, Molovecchio Marina, or down to Amico Shipyard, I know where everything is. I know where all the access is. You know, now important to say that in Genoa and in San Remo and Imperia and Monaco and Niceport and what else? All of those places. they're all public access. There's no pass required. You don't need a pass to go in there. So you can just walk in, but a lot of people might misunderstand. Like in Genoa, it's very obvious that it's public, right? And there's lots of people walking down there. In San Remo, there is a gate with a barrier on it, and it stops traffic from going in, but it doesn't stop pedestrians. So there's no restrictions on going into the marinas. But if you didn't already know that, you might be mistaken for seeing it and going, "Oh, I'm not allowed in here." Automatically see a barrier down, you assume you can't go in, but you can. And Monaco's the same. Monaco is public access. There's a lot of restaurants and bars and stuff like that all around the marina. One of the things that makes Monaco Marina so good is that you can sit in a restaurant overlooking the marina and have a meal and or have a drink or whatever. And Monaco is so tiny that everything's overlooking everything pretty much, right? I did a stat recently and I said that Monaco is smaller than Central Park. It has less actual space per square meter than Central Park. So that's how small Monaco is. Obviously, it's not square or rectangle like Central Park is, but it has actual less space. So it's a tiny little place. It's a magical place, Monaco. To me, I know a lot of people say to me, I don't like Monaco, it's too expensive. And I understand that. If you want to go out and socialize in bars and stuff, it's mighty expensive. But I don't do that. And everything I like about Monaco is free, right? I have free access to the marinas. I have free access to Casino Square where all of the supercars go. I have free access to the road systems where the supercars are driving. I don't need to pay for anything to enjoy myself in Monaco. And then there's free access to the sun because it's always sunny in Monaco. I think somebody should make a comedy called that. I think there was one like that. Wasn't there a show called It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or something? It was an American show, I think. I've never seen it, but the name sounds familiar. But I always say that they should make a comedy called It's Always Sunny in Monaco, because it almost always is. I think I can count on one hand when I've been to Monaco and it hasn't been sunny. So yeah, there are a couple of marinas that you cannot access publicly. Actually, I can only think of one on the Côte d'Azur, right, on that area, and that is what's it called? Antibes. Antibes Superyacht Marina is now closed to the public. It never used to be, but then it was taken over by another company, and they put a gate up to where all the big super yachts go. So you can go into the marina, the smaller part of the marina, but there's a gate. I think I've showed it in a video before. There's a gate for where the big yachts go. And even though I was a crew member when I was there, I still couldn't get in. I knew I couldn't. I didn't try, but I knew I wouldn't be able to because I know how it works there. Well, what happens is when a super yacht arrives at Antibes, the yacht that's docked there, it has to send a manifest of the crew to the gate guards, and then when you approach to get in, you show your ID. They look at your name on the ID. They ask you which boat you're from. They go to their manifest. They check that your name's on the list. And then once they've established that you're on that boat, then they open the door. And if you not, even if I've got crew ID, if my boat's not in there, or even if my boat is in there, if my name's not on the list, I'm not getting in. So that's the way they do it there. So whenever I go to Antibes to film, I film from the other side, and then I fly the drone over to get shots of the boats. There is a place, there's an old wall there of fortification or something. You can get reasonably close there, and you can film from there. The problem is it's full of tourists, so I wouldn't be able to talk there, because it's so noisy. So I can go there to film for a little bit, and then like I said, I film with the drone, and then that's how I put it together. So they're surprisingly easy to access. I think it's part of the attraction, certainly for Monaco. And like I said, I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this podcast There was a chap that posted a comment on the channel and said that technically you're supposed to get permission to film commercially in Monaco, and that I should get a lawyer to make sure everything's legal. Well, but the reality is that Monaco actually has an award every year for the best influencer, and I can guarantee that none of those influencers have actually got written permission to film there. Now, you could make an argument either way on that, but the reality of Monaco is there are so many, and I say this every time I'm there are so many police in Monaco that you couldn't do anything illegal and get away with it. And I'll give you some examples. There's two examples I have where the police have stopped me. One of them, I was driving along the straight where the actual Formula One starting grid is. It wasn't the Formula One, but I was on, that's the same road. And I was driving along there and I was in traffic, and there's like, I think there's 3 lanes, and the lane on the right-hand side is for motorbikes only, I believe. And I didn't realize that. And all I did was pulled out into that lane, and I overtook one car and they pulled back in. And immediately I did it, a scooter pulled up next to me with a guy on it. It wasn't a police scooter. It was just a guy on a scooter, and he pulled up next to me and he took his ID out and he was police, and he said, "You cannot be in this lane." So all I did was took over one car, and straight away he was there. So that's an example. Second example was that during a Monaco Yacht Show, I think it was 2021, and I knew there was a no flying mandate in place, but I saw somebody else flying a drone, and I thought, well, if he's flying his drone, I'm going to fly mine, which I know is a stupid idea because he might have had permission, right? But I didn't think of it at the time, and it was all relatively new. You could fly drones in Monaco up until a point, and then they put down all these laws. So I decided, I'll get my drone. So the next day I went back with my drone. It's only a small drone, and I flew it for about 5 minutes, very, very briefly. And then I landed it again, put it away, and I left. And while I was flying, I saw this guy look at me, didn't think anything of it. And then I went downstairs and I was walking along, and a police motorbike pulled up, 2 police motorbikes actually pulled up, and the guy started questioning me about flying the drone, and it was illegal, and he wanted to see my drone. So I took my drone out. It's only small, and he was sort of weighing it in his hand, and he's like, "No, you're not allowed to fly here, and it's illegal," and all this stuff. And I was like, "Oh, right, okay." So I thought I was okay because this other guy was flying, but then that the last footage I've got from an aerial point of view of Monaco was that footage in 2021. After that, I tried to get permission to fly, not at the yacht show because there's an embargo on drones at the yacht show. But I tried to get permission. If you want to fly at all in Monaco, you need permission, and I couldn't. I've never been able to get permission to fly, so I never fly in Monaco now. But the reason why I'm telling those 2 stories is to show that if you were doing something wrong, the police would crack down on you straight away. And the fact that I'm filming in Monaco so often, and the fact that nobody's ever said anything to me about filming, and obviously I'm putting these videos on YouTube. That some of my videos from Monaco have millions of views. The Formula One stuff was just recently, and a few months ago, I had like 300,000 views per video from there. And if like I said, during the, did I say yacht show, the Formula One? During those times, the police presence is massive. So if they didn't want me to fly, if they didn't want me to film, then they would stop me very, very quickly. So, the point being is because Monaco recognizes the importance of that exposure that they get from all of these influencers. That's why they have the Influencer of the Year award, which I've never even been invited to. So I only found out about it because it was on YouTube. So yeah, so that's not a good sign for me, is it really? Access to the marinas, all but Antibes. Well, the big boy yacht side of the marina, at least. The other side you can get access to. Beaulieu-sur-Mer and Villefranche-sur-Mer are 2 other places that I go. They're not marina. Well, they have marinas, but that's not where the yachts are. They're just at anchor. And those places there, I go and film whenever I'm there, and I just fly the drone because you can't obviously they're all out at anchor. There's no big super yacht marina there, so they're all out at anchor. I just fly the drone out there and get some shots of them, and then I do a talkie bit near the water. But I'm trying to think of other places where there's La Ciotat in France is there's a ship, that's a shipyard, and they are very, very litigious when it comes to well, they're very threatening when it comes to any filming there. Bizarrely, when it comes to filming from the ground, then they're okay. But once you put a drone in the air, then they're threatening you, saying that your drone's illegally filming and you're not allowed to be in the marina. And I say to them, well, I'm not in the marina. They say it's trespassing. Is it? The laws of when you're on the ground are not the same as in the air, right? There's the airspace is a different authority. They have no control over the airspace, which they try to argue that they do. And I said, I said, even though they don't have control over the airspace, whenever I fly in La Ciotat, because of the way they are, I always stop at the border to film, right? So I never fly over the shipyard. I always stay outside of the shipyard, and I always show it in the video to show that the drone is not inside, even though the rules state that they don't have any control over that, because there's a difference between what you can prove in court and what they can say in court and what they can say to YouTube, right? So you've got to be super careful when you, especially with the drones, because I kind of understand, because people see a drone overhead, they think it's super intrusive, right? Even though the drone really is not seeing anything that some guy with a 500mm lens couldn't see. And in fact, the guy with the 500mm lens could see more than the drone most often. So it just bugs people. That's why I'm always very respectful. I always keep the drone at a respectful distance from any yacht that I film, because I'm not interested in the people on board. I'm interested in the yacht, right? So it's East Isthman Superyachts. It's not East Isthman Superyacht owners. So we know I don't care really who owns a yacht. Like the most recent video in Monaco where the security were trying to stop us filming. The reality is they can't stop us. They can complain to us. They can. Most people don't know the rules. You see, most people who were filming, they were saying it to everyone, not just to me. They were saying, you can't film here, it's a private yacht. And people were going, oh, okay. And then they'd stop filming, right? So, but then when they said it to me, I just said, well, no, I know it's a private yacht, but I'm allowed to film. I'm in the marina. The marina's public access. I'm allowed to film. And they were like, no, you're not. I said, well, yeah, I am. So, and I just kept filming. And they were cool. They were professional about it. And I understand that. I understand the situation they're in. They're trying to protect the privacy of their owner, or not their owner, but the yacht's owner, their employer. And I get it. Like, and I even spoke to the first guy, the guy that's in the video you see go, no, like this. Not him, but the second guy I spoke to, who's actually a subscriber of the channel, and he recognized me, and he said, he says, I watch your channel. And I said, and I recognized him to be from Nepal. And I said, you're from Nepal? He said, yes. I said, are you ex-Gurkha? The Gurkha regiment, very famous Nepalese regiment that was created for the British military when we were out in that part of the world. And we still have the British Gurkhas today. And the Indians also have Gurkha regiments as well. I forgot to ask him which one he was in, because that's the question. Are you ex-Gurkha? And the second question is British or Indian. But I forgot to ask. But anyway, he was a fan of the channel, and they were super professional, and because I'm crew, I get it, so I was cool about it. And I said to them, I'm not trying to film anyone, and if I see anybody on board in the footage, I'll blur their faces out. And I was actually filming at one point, and a guy came down the passerelle with his shoes on, which immediately tells me he's a guest, right? So as soon as I saw that, I just stopped filming. And then I waited until he left, and then I started filming again. So, yeah. So it's all about it's about professionalism. It's about respect, being respectful, and that kind of stuff. So, I think if you see these videos on YouTube where people get into confrontations, like Daily Driven Exotics, I watch their channel, and they make videos just on the basis of a confrontation with a cop. And they argue with the cop and stuff like this. And that, those videos are designed because of the confrontation to make the video more popular. And I could suppose I could do those kinds of videos if I wanted to, but if I started to do that in Monaco, I'd probably get, after, you know, if I did one and it had millions of views and I was being confrontational with yacht crew, probably the next time I went there, I would get stopped from filming and get told I wasn't allowed to film. So, you know, maybe I might get a, you know, 2 million view video out of it, but then I might not ever be allowed to film there again. So it's not worth it, you know. So, and I'm not a confrontational type person. So, and the Gurkhas will F you up. So you got to be careful as well. I served with the Gurkhas, so I know what they're like. They're tough guys. So anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I just thought we'd do this little video. It might become a podcast. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to sort of go through it, play it back, see if I think it's worth it. I'll definitely post it on Patreon, and then you can let me know, and maybe I'll post it as a podcast. I haven't done one for a couple of months now, so I really need to get back on that. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Sometimes I will make a video and I think it's not going to do very well, and people love it and they go, oh yeah, I love this behind the scenes type stuff. And then sometimes I make a video and I think it's going to be really popular, and then nobody watches it. So it's still a bit of a mystery to me, YouTube and video uploads and stuff like that. So, but because of you are patrons, obviously when I'm recording this, I'm thinking about the patrons, then you are looking for more of the behind the scenes stuff and that. So hopefully this was interesting to you. Let me know, like I said, in the comments, if you've got any other suggestions for videos or for podcasts. Also, please let me know in the comments as well. But thanks to everybody who is a patron, everybody, the VVIPs especially. Thanks for supporting us and allowing us to be able to do these chips, which we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Well, we wouldn't be able to do them as often as we do them because we wouldn't be able to afford it. So yeah, thanks very much, guys, to everybody who is on the Patreon channel, and everybody who watches on YouTube as well. And if you're listening to this on one of the podcast places, then I appreciate it wherever you are, just for taking the time to hang out with me. So, all right, guys, I will leave it there. Like I said, thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video if it's on YouTube, or you know, all of that stuff to help us to get spread to other people. And yeah, take it easy. Bye bye.